Welcome to The Current by TreasureCoast.com, where we discuss interesting people, places, and happenings on Florida's Treasure Coast.
Well, cool. Well, look, I appreciate you being on. I'm pumped to have the conversation, and a lot of your content, like I mentioned, it kind of had popped up a couple times in our groups, and I think probably just in my feed, the reels, and I just think
Yeah.
what you're doing is really cool. It's an awesome angle, and I think it's something for people locally. When I subscribed to your newsletter, the first couple I looked at, I was like, there's a ton of value, and I appreciate what you're doing. And maybe we can start by you just talking about who you are personally and the Sunland News, how that came about.
Yeah. So I'm Ja'Min Devon Brown. Some people just call me Ja'Min. But yeah, I'm born here, born in Longwood Hospital. I grew up here, went to school right down the road from where I'm at right now, Lincoln Park Academy. Went off to school at USF in Tampa. Came back maybe like a week before COVID started. So like 2020, February, March time. And yeah, when I initially came back home, I had kind of got burnt out with Tampa, kind of got burnt out with, working a job, as they say. And I don't know, I just, for some reason, I got bit with like the entrepreneurial bug. Like I've always had it, but then at some point along the line, it kind of got tossed in the back. And I was just like, I got to survive. Let me go to school. Let me do the thing. And then it kind of came back around. I was like, man, I really just want to do my own thing. So when I first came back home, I started doing video full time. A lot of live streams during that time during COVID. That's kind of was my niche, if you will. And yeah, kind of just been riding that wave. I've always had, I'm jack of all trades, if you will. So when I was younger, I would build websites, I would code, I would make music, I'd do all types of things. And when I first started doing video, I started venturing into building websites for people. So, you know, I would say it was just video that I was doing, but to be honest with you, just to pay the bills, like I would build a website every now and then. I would do these other things. Um, the reason why I want to sort of just couch Sunland News and all of that is Sunland News is kind of a amalgamation and a combination of all of my different skills kind of coming together. And it's something I didn't
Yeah.
have, like, I didn't have Sunland to sort of pour my own thing into. So I was doing it for other people. You know, I would do a video over here, but then I would do a website over here. I would, make music with my friends. I would, design flyers for this person over here. Like, just all of the different things. And as I think somebody told me one time, it's like you got to be careful what you ask for, because I definitely asked to be like an entrepreneur. I definitely asked to like do my own thing, but I did not ask for that to like be for me. I was doing it for other people. I didn't ask like, oh, I want to do my thing. Like I want to wake up, I want to paint, and I want that to be sort of how I make my living. So
For
maybe
sure.
like a year, about 2 years ago, I kind of got burnt out doing the client work stuff. And I was like, man, I really got to find something. Like I got to find whatever that is for me. I didn't really try too much. I dabbled here and there, but then, the idea of doing like a newsletter kind of just came on me. I mean, I've heard some podcasts and different things. I've been reading Morning Brew for years. I've been reading The Hustle for years. I've been a newsletter like connoisseur, if you will, for a long time. And I've always loved media. I've always found like the sort of mix between like writing, storytelling, media, film. Like I love that mix. And yeah, maybe like a year. I say the year was August 1st, but really I started like 2 or 3 weeks before that. But it was just to friends and family, just kind of sending the newsletter. I was like, man, I think I just want to start like talking about the county. I kind of looked at the local media landscape, and you know, as many probably can sort of feel, like local media isn't what it really used to be. Like I remember waking up and sort of um, reading the newspaper when I was young. Like I was reading the Wall Street Journal when I was like 11 or 12. But I also was reading like I don't know if it was TC Palm then, but the Treasure Coast Tribune or whatever the name was.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and it just used to be so much more like, I don't want to say grounded, but it was like more rooted. Like I feel like now it's more high level stuff you get. Obviously, you get sort of
Yeah.
talk about local government and different things like that. But I remember seeing like my older brother Mo in the newspaper like for like his track competition. Like that's still hanging up in my uncle's shop. I would see like, these more community stories. I was like, man, we kind of don't have that. I remember seeing the obituaries in the newspaper, right? Like, and I was like, oh, I think the newsletter I think I can do that. I think I can bring some of that back. And I was like, I'm from here. Like my family is entrenched in the city, in Fort Pierce specifically, but across the Treasure Coast in general. We've probably been here for like 100 years or something, my family. So, and
That's awesome.
yeah, and not too long before my uncle Darren, everybody calls him Slate, but my uncle, he passed away. And my uncle had been a barber since he was like 14, 15. He had been a barber for like 40 years. And I remember just like growing up in the shop and sort of just people just talking, barbershop talk, just kind of things that are going on, things that are happening. I remember people arguing about the local high school football games, Central versus Westwood. I was like, man, I kind of wanted to start the newsletter to bring something
Yeah.
back. So I started just writing it. I had no idea, like, sort of what I was doing, and I think that was beautiful. And I think it's still beautiful now that I kind of don't know what I'm doing because I don't know my limits. So, like, I kind of go past them all the time. But it also encourages me to study, to read, to actually get better at the craft. And yeah, that's sort of just how the whole thing started. And, I think we're at, 7,500 subscribers now, somewhere in that range, on the newsletter.
Nice.
And recently started doing video content, as you were saying earlier. So people are starting to like see my face more and everything. But, this is always sort of the plan to like get the newsletter down packed as like the main product. Cause Sunland to me I tell people it's a technology and media company, and like the newsletter is one product. I look at the newsletter like the iPhone, it
Definitely.
is one
Yeah.
thing. And, my plan is to build other things, adjacent to it, still with sort of this idea of home, local, keeping local. Like that's the whole idea of Sunland. But the newsletter is like the creme de la creme. That's like my baby. So yeah.
I noticed that because I mean the newsletter for sure is you can kind of tell that's the main thing. It's very robust and there's a lot of info in it, and you can tell that there's a lot of personal, localized information. And those stories are really cool. Like when you talk about your uncle and hearing people talk, or when you talk about like what used to be in like the newspaper, I know exactly what you mean. Like you'd see like I remember I was in the newspaper once for like some wrestling tournament and thinking it was so cool. Kids don't really get that unless they're like, I don't know, they do some like all area football thing essentially. But you also have there was a couple like web apps you had, right? I think one was like the little library finder, and maybe these are just other products or things you're messing around with, or
so I think the website is called TinyWow. TinyWow. It's like it's sort of like a free website that you can do
right.
PDF stuff, whatever. Man, I would love like a local TinyWow. Like I would love a local sort of just free to use website where you can find stuff to do, stuff to eat, free libraries, like just like a tool to sort of like use the county better. So I started building it maybe like 6 months ago. It's called Play Sunland. You can go to play.sunlandnews.com. But my goal is to just continue to build it out completely free. Same with the newsletter. I always want to keep the newsletter free, and I always want to keep like sort of these adjacent products to the newsletter as free as possible. And that's sort of the TLDR of it. And yeah, people have been really enjoying the free little library finder. I have one outside of bookstore. I'm hopefully opening up before the end of the year here in Fort Pierce. So yeah, it really just started like, I just something I wanted, similar to the newsletter. I'm like, man, I just wish I could hop on and find something to eat like I've never ate before. So, I built like a food quiz, and also 772 Eats I built is like a sort of secondary product where people it's like a food guide. You can track what you eat, keep your own sort of journal, if you will. So yeah, that's really like the goal. Like I said, like the newsletter, it started and I'm super, super passionate about it. And like, that's sort of my main focus. I spend 4 to 5 hours just on the newsletter every day, probably like 2 hours in the morning, 3 hours in the evening. But, I also have all of these other ideas and, everything that I want to do that, they kind of spawn off into like these little apps or, potentially like, short films, videos, all this different type of stuff. So, yeah.
That's cool. I was going to ask you about the bookstore, because I think there was a link to it. I think it's on your Instagram. that it says it's,
Yep.
or maybe it has its own Instagram profile. But I was going to ask you what the deal was, because you were hoping to open that up this year on like 25th Street.
Yeah, yep, right down the street from LPA, 25th Street and Avenue I. If you know Stoney's Barbecue, right next door. Yeah, the
Right.
goal is to open it up here, hopefully before like November time. I keep pushing it back simply because, full transparency, I am very ambitious, but I'm also, I'm very anal about like stuff. So, I will dig my heels into something like the newsletter, and I'm like, before I know it, I pick my head up. It's like a month later. I'm like, I haven't touched any of these other ideas, but it's coming for sure. And we're going to start doing some events here soon to kind of just start bringing people, get familiar with the space, and then eventually build out the bookstore properly. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's cool. And I think that would fill a good gap too, because kind of like you had mentioned, like the technical side of things, or bringing something like the more antiquated stories, whether it's like in person, if you're in like a barber shop, or you're reading something on like the newspaper, bring it into like a newsletter format. I think people also crave something like more like a nuanced version of something like a bookstore, or like a library, or like that people nowadays, like coffee shops the last few years have been like the place where people are
Yeah.
relaxing, or these libraries, a way for it to, I don't know, bring it, I'm not sure what the word is. It's just more like a more modern way of kind of redefining what people used to do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Definitely, like bringing back that third place. I feel like we've sort of, it's there. It's there. I don't ever want to say like, oh, it doesn't exist, but it definitely does. But I think a lot of times, you probably have learned this too. A lot of times, it's just framing. It's just storytelling. Like the reason why people
Yeah.
may use something or do something is simply because they just don't know about it. Like that's it. I cannot tell you. One of my myths. Well, one of the things I thought going in that I've now debunked is that I'm like, oh man, I'm going to be sort of, writing to people between the ages of like 35 and 75 or 45 and 75. Like that couldn't be further from the truth. There is a lot of energy around. I always say people do not scroll past home. There's a lot of energy for home. It's just a matter of if people know about what's going on or not. And I think the same thing is true for something like the bookstore or any events. I mean, growing up here, I've definitely, heard the thing like, oh man, there's nothing to do here. There's, on a Friday night, like what is there to do? We got to go down to West Palm or whatever, but there's a lot going on, if you subscribe to Sunland News, I can send you some, but there's a lot of events going on. It's just, I don't know if it's getting in front of people. So, the bookstore sort of came just naturally because I was like, man, I really see the need for more community, more events. I was like, what's better than like a bookstore? I love to read. My mom's a teacher for 35 years now. Like, I'm a reading child. So, it just seemed sort of like a natural thing. And as you could tell, like, bookstores are coming back. There's a Barnes and Nobles opening up over in St. Lucie West. So, I definitely think like bookstores and hopefully the Sunland bookstore is like that place, that third place that people can come to relax, read something, find, new friends, different things like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Let me ask you, how do you decide what stories you're going to cover? I mean, you're mostly, where are you usually getting your sources, and how do you decide because I mean, like you said, you're spending a good amount of time. You can see that in the newsletter, but do you find yourself parsing through different stories and deciding, hey, look, this is something that might be worth it, or this is something that I'm going to probably pass on or put on the back burner?
Yeah, yeah. So I kind of put myself into a box when I started the newsletter on purpose. So the newsletter doesn't cover politics or crime on purpose, simply because I believe that I could write 5 days a week about St. Lucie County without touching those things. I think there is outlets and platforms and companies that do that probably much better than I would. Um, so I don't cover politics or crime in the newsletter. Now, that's not to say the newsletter is not political, because there are things that are topics at large, like the economy, jobs, the school board, that sort of will spawn into more political discussions. But my idea isn't to sort of be this bipartisan thing. It's meant to be a playbook for how to use the county, how to understand the county better. It's supposed to be, 95% positive, food, events, community, people. Every now and then there is, tougher topics that you have to discuss, but So I kind of put myself into a box there. But Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I typically do news, and I'll kind of talk about that in a second. Tuesdays, I usually do deep dives, whether that be an interview or a topic like the school board, something that doesn't necessarily make the front page news, but still deserves some coverage. Um, so I'll do restaurant food reviews on Tuesdays. Thursdays is a big events newsletter that goes out that has maybe like 25 to 50 events every week, up and down the Treasure Coast and some in and out of town. But typically on Mondays have become like covering what's going on, at some of the like commissioner meetings, St. Lucie County commissioner meetings, city council for Port St. Lucie, the Fort Pierce city commissioner meetings. Those are usually Mondays. Wednesdays has become sort of, anything that kind of affects your wallet. I like to cover on Wednesdays, whether that be jobs or the sort of local real estate market or something like that. And Friday is like a bit of a recap, maybe another sort of story that just touches on news that's happening in general, maybe something new that's happening, something new that's opening up, something like that. So that's sort of the content mix of the newsletter.
I mean, building on that, like, I guess I don't want to like get too far into like a rabbit hole, but just going off some of the things that you cover and what are your thoughts on like the direction of St. Lucie County and where you see it in now and where you see it going? I mean, what's your overall temperature on it? And I mean, I'm sure you've got to be optimistic to a degree doing what you're doing and being from here. But I'm interested to know what your thoughts are, whether it's like economic or just we talk about things to do and how some people think they got to go to West Palm or Jupiter or something like that to do something.
Yeah, I mean, I am super pro St. Lucie County. I'm super pro home. I love this place. So my outlook on it is very positive. Obviously, there's tons of growth. I don't remember what the number is. I think we're supposed to be at nearly 500,000 people throughout the county by like 2030 or something.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I do think there's a lot of tension there, just from writing the stories, reading the feedback that I get from the readers, because I just want to say shout out to the Sunland News readers because it is a dialogue. As much as I think I'm like a curator or something, I'm in conversation with people all the time, which is how many stories come to me now. So, but there's a lot of tension there for like specifically probably what PSL is becoming, sort of the loss of sort of what it used to be known for, and also sort of the um, trying to maintain some semblance of control. I always hear people say like, I don't want to become another Fort Lauderdale or Miami or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and with Fort Pierce, I think Fort Pierce is sort of the same in a lot of ways. I think while it's not necessarily about growth of the population, I just recently wrote a story about there's actually probably going to be a decline in people moving here, which will probably affect the Fort Pierce budget and everything. But again, just a lot of new development, new construction, ultimately like who's it serving, and I think those are valid questions. I am, like I said, I'm overall optimistic about the county. That's one of the reasons why after I started the newsletter, I found myself being in like a really good position because I was like, there's going to be a lot of people here, and I think there's going to be a lot of people that need to navigate the county in order just to understand what's going on. So I think as any city municipality, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. But I'm overall positive. I think the people that we have here who grew up here, born here, they fight tooth and nail for St. Lucie County. So I think you will see that
Yeah.
a lot more. I really believe in the people that come from here. Not saying I don't believe in anybody else, but I definitely believe in the people. Yeah. Sometimes when you say that, it's like, I believe in this thing. It's like, oh, you don't believe in this? No, I just believe, I believe that the people that are from here will always fight for here. And ultimately you will probably, as most things, land in the middle. Like, yes, we're going to get this new construction, but we're going to name it after this thing that we lost. And we're, sort of in the path of getting this new thing. So I think that's sort of what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think that's fair too to say like, hey, I believe in people from St. Lucie County or wherever you're from. I mean, especially when you've got your finger on the pulse of the area. I mean, I know like the Treasure Coast in general is a really different space. I mean, for us, it is. it's I like to follow people like you, or like I'm sure you know Dan at SLC Scanner. I like to keep in touch with these. It's kind of like more. I think it's faster paced because a lot of the things that we deal with are,
Mhm.
I guess, evergreen. More, I guess that's probably a good word. It's just evergreen topics by and large that cast a big
Yeah,
umbrella over certain spaces, and then we try to look like, at least for me, we don't do a lot of, I guess I would call it like beat news as much as we might be independent journalism or local journalism. It's not a lot of like, hey,
yeah,
this is happening today, this is happening now, keep your eye on this coming up, or the city council's talking about this. And so for me, it's interesting to hear you say that, because I agree. I think people are very different. St. Lucie County, Martin County too, and Indian River County. Like when you go from Vero Beach down to Hope Sound, that's pretty much the Treasure Coast down to Tequesta. And when you go further south
yeah,
and you hit Palm Beach County, it's a very different. And again, nothing against those people, but it is a very different world. I mean, people are gonna fight for they what they see in their home. Um, and so
yeah.
it's interesting to me to hear you say that, because the more people like you that take that energy and come up with something like the Sunland News newsletter, I think a lot of people buy into that. I think they crave that to an extent. They crave
Yeah,
like this
yeah,
feeling.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think, unfortunately, and when I talk about local news or local media, I'm not sort of disparaging anybody, because we need the more the merrier, especially as it relates to local media. But I think a lot of that got lost as sort of this technology thing that we were talking about earlier just coming into play. A lot of like the local journalism just could not keep up, right? To instill that sort of
Yeah.
feeling of home and that pride, and kind of, yeah, just instill that feeling of like knowing what's going on and like feeling pride in it. Um, and I wouldn't even be too hard on yourself about the more like evergreen thing. I would say outside of this is maybe my clip, my hot take right here. I would say outside of crime in St. Lucie County, um, and some things at the government level, there is no beat news. There is no beat news.
Right.
I'm not calling this lady. I'm not calling this lady out, but she commented on my post the other day, and she sent me off into this wormhole. So I thank her. But I wrote an article about sort of I wrote an article separate from the newsletter about the sort of like local special election that's coming up at Fort Pierce, and I got wind of something, a candidate that's going to be running, that I thought was a worthy thing to put in my piece in my article. And she said, like, are you campaigning for this guy? And I'm just like, no. And it hit me in that mind. I was like, oh, we don't have beats anymore. I was like, people don't understand the idea of having a scoop. Like, I heard
Right.
this thing
Right.
and I verify it through sources. So I'm putting it in this piece. And it's just like that doesn't exist like for local media. Well, local media here right now. There's a lot of great reporting, like amazing reporting, and there's some deeper sort of journalism going on. But I would say across the aggregate of Treasure Coast, it doesn't happen as much as it used to. And I think, starting Sunland News, I had no idea that this was sort of the landscape when I first started. But now knowing that, I feel like it's my duty to bring some of that back. Now, that doesn't necessarily have to be from me. I'm smart enough to know I don't know everything. So, part of my goal over the next year is to begin to bring in other voices, other people who are better at the craft of journalism than me, to begin to bring some of that back. Because I think the more the merrier. And if you read the research on this, towns with local news end up benefiting the people who live in that town a lot more. So that's sort of the goal.
That's cool. What do you have in the works? What's coming up next for Sunland?
So yeah, man, what can I talk about? I can talk about anything, but obviously we got the Sunland bookstore coming up. But as far as the news, Sunland newsletter, the newsletter will remain sort of where it's at with some tweaks, just from just making it better over time. I, as many probably know now, I started doing video across, Instagram, YouTube, and all these different places a couple months ago, and pretty much going to double down on that, do more of the same, more long form discussions, um, and kind of just begin to develop like a more robust like media ecosystem around everything that's happening. Um, and start to sort of play with the business model, if you will, of local news as well. Something I've been working on is this idea of pay what you want news, that I'll probably be implementing soon because, again, just I need the resources to do the deeper reporting, but I also don't believe in charging people hand over fist. Something I've been developing and mixing is just pay what you want for this article, pay what you want for this piece, this deep dive, to kind of begin to get people interested in what's happening on a deeper level, again, past just the daily newsletter that keeps people sort of informed and up to date pretty quickly. But let's, for 4 months, go over here and talk about what's going on at the school board level. For 4 months, let's go over here and talk about this other thing. You know, developing, processes and things around that to make that happen is sort of like the next steps, and really just doubling down on that. Something I've learned since starting Sunland News is it's really hard to focus on more than one thing. And Sunland News is my one thing. Sunland Company, Sunland News is my one thing. So just doubling down more on that, planting my flag, if you will. And yeah, pick my head up 3-5 years from now. We'll see where we're at.
That's awesome to hear. And I know what you mean. A lot of times people say that to me. They'll be like, oh, I mean, it's a popular thing, like the side gig type thing. We're like, oh, okay, well, look, I'll see how this does. But the reality is, like, if you don't believe in it, or it's either one thing, either you don't believe in it or you're not going to put enough time into it. And both of those are very important when it comes to if it's going to be successful. So, at the end of the day, you're not going to know unless you really put the time, money, attention to it. It's tough to do. I mean, is your goal to be doing this yourself? Are you thinking of bringing other people on to help with certain angles over time, or this will probably be you doing it for the foreseeable future, and as things develop, you'll see how things go?
Definitely going to bring in other people. I'm not Superman in any stretch of the imagination. I don't want to be. So definitely bringing in other great minds. And I just got to say, not just around news. So, again, back to the one thing, I like to think of like Sunland as like Willy Wonka chocolate factory. Like there's a lot of different things going on, but it's still the same message of local and home. Keeping local and reminding people to come home is sort of the main sort of two core tenets of that. You will see that play out in different products and different ideas. So yeah, bringing in more people to cover what's going on in St. Lucie County, both from like a government standpoint, but also just what's the new restaurants opening, what's a good date night, developing the content mix there. So definitely bringing in more people there. And then also bringing in people just on a design level, working on other sort of ventures within Sunland. But I do want to say I have a team as it is now that I want to make sure I shout out. Jaquan, who has been with me from the beginning as it relates to Sunland, just kind of bouncing things off of. If you see any Sunland imagery, video, he probably had a hand in it from the look, how it feels. So I want to shout him out. Also, Brian, who is creative director of Sunland. He does all of the editing for the videos, but he also does all the graphics, kind of the beautiful design that you see in the newsletter. We want to thank Brian. And then I kind of have like a board of trustees, if you will, not officially, because, but, I kind of have like my liaisons, Darius and Marcus and my girlfriend, Jalen, like we all kind of just come together on the idea of something. We're constantly throwing ideas back and forth. But, the goal is to definitely develop the team, bring in the people that are helping me now on the side full time, and also, bring in more people that I haven't met yet. So.
That's awesome. And I know what you mean. That's good to hear about the people kind of in the background, because it is like for us, there's always like this revolving door of people who are contributing and who are helping. And a lot of times, like we had talked about this a little bit before, we might have, it probably was before we started recording, but just there's always this evolution of different things you can be doing, different things you could be covering, different things you want to do. And it's like, as a one person show, it's virtually impossible, especially not just because your time is so limited, but your expertise is, there's so many people you could bring in who just have a better eye on design or a better feel for what the content should look like, or X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely, realized that, through all the different sort of books growing up reading, just like, how do you build something? But the team is the most important thing. Like I said, I have a lot of different ideas. Some would label that probably ADHD or something. I won't be so harsh on myself, but I definitely need people to keep me focused, keep the brand focused. I don't want to confuse people about what we're doing. I want to be very sort of straightforward because, again, I think a lot of sort of the unfocused nature of things will kind of turn people off and get people uninterested. I want to make sure I stay on the point that, nope, we're covering the county. You can expect a newsletter in your inbox every weekday morning between 6 and 7 a.m. Like we want to build a consistency to let people know that we're here. We're not going anywhere. And, we're going to build some things off to the side that, you might be interested in as well that, we want to invite people to as well. But want to make sure we build the consistency up. And, my plan is to, I started Sunland News. I should have said this at the outset. I started Sunland News with the idea as well. I mixed all the other things with like, okay, is this something I could do for 50 years? That was like one of the major questions out of the maybe 4 or 5 questions I had. Like, is this a 50-year idea? Because if it wasn't that, I was like, I don't know. I kind of want to find something that I know I can be working on. So Sunland News is that for me. Sunland Company is that for me. I plan on, not going anywhere anytime soon. So, yeah.
Sorry, I always mute. I'll mute sometimes while you're talking, and then I go to talk and it's muted.
Worries. No problem.
Yeah, man. I think that's a good point. Like having that direction, having that identity of kind of who you are and what you do, because it's so easy. Kind of like we had said before, it's so easy to like you have this different avenue, and you're kind of chasing, really like analytics. You're chasing visitors or engagement or this or that, and then you kind of have to take, at least for me personally, I find myself, we'll take a step back and be like, look, really, what are we doing? Like I always say, and I read this every morning, treasurecoast.com, whether you're here for a day, a week, or a lifetime, we want to give you what you need to live, work, and play and make the most of your time on the Treasure Coast, period. That's what we do. Because it's so easy to look at the shiny new toy or a new technology. Oh, this is coming out. Is it really going to turn the needle? Is it really going to provide value for people who are listening, watching, reading? Sometimes that answer is no. Sometimes you're just kind of chasing things. And I think you're right. I think it helps to have that identity of who you are and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that. I love the focused nature of that statement. And, I think we definitely need more of that. And not saying you can't have fun and do other things, but I think if you want to build anything sort of worthwhile that lasts, you have to be that strict about it. You kind of have to say like, hey, we're doubling down on this. We're not doing this. There's probably a quote somewhere that I'm forgetting who said it, but there's the real trick is to say no to a bunch of things. There's maybe one yes. So that's sort of the goal with Sunland. Want
awesome. Well, look, I appreciate you being on. Is there anything else? What else do you want to say or cover? Did we kind of? I want to make sure people get a good idea of Sunland and what you do, what the direction is, and we can kind of include links to the newsletter and the website and everything. But is there anything else that you want to cover?
Not necessarily. I would just encourage people definitely if they want an easy way to keep up with the county, go to sunlandnews.com, put your email in, and we'll make sure we do that for you.
If you're invested in the Treasure Coast, I hope that they'll give it a look, subscribe, and support you in any way they can.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you again for everything that you do with treasurecoast.com and all the groups. Thank you for letting me post in the groups. I appreciate that. Definitely helps out, spreading the news that we're covering. And yeah, I would love to come back on. Always happy to chat. Anything I can do to help you, we can talk offline. But yeah, anything I can do to help you, absolutely, I'm here.
Likewise, man. I appreciate you again. Thanks, Ja'Min.
Yeah, thank you.
That's a wrap for this episode of The Current by TreasureCoast.com. If you enjoyed the conversation, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Follow us on social media or visit TreasureCoast.com for local events, tips, and news. Have a guest or topic you'd love to hear on the show? Let us know at TreasureCoast.com. Until next time, keep riding the current and enjoying everything the Treasure Coast has to offer. See you soon.